Welcome back to another episode of the Vinyl Listening Lounge at the Long Beach Public Library. Thank you so much for joining us again for our third episode now?
Third episode, Tom.
Allie, I am Tom.
I am Allie.
And welcome to the Vinyl Listening Lounge. Today, on our Generation Education segment, we're going to get back into Allie teaching me about an album that was from her lifetime and me teaching about her from one that really meant a lot to me. So let's get into it today.
Let's dig into it. I love these two albums and how they fit together so nicely.
Okay.
I think the theme is teenage angst.
It was like we picked these records sort of individually, and then you're like, wait, we both were very sad and angry at 15 listening to these records
weird.
Individually.
Yeah.
So what is
Let's be sad together,
What's
Tom.
our first record today?
So today we are going to talk about Alice in Chains' Facelift, their debut album from 1990. I did the math just before, and I realized that this came out when I was 13 years old, if my math is correct.
We'll say like 13 to 15.
13 to 15.
I was technically 13 when my album came out because my birthday hadn't happened yet.
So you know what that time in your life is all about, and Facelift really checked all those boxes for me. This is one of the first grunge albums. They came out of this heavy metal scene. When it came out, this is a little too beyond the scope for you, but there was a show on MTV called Headbangers Ball.
I know Headbangers Ball.
Okay.
All right.
So they were like in between Headbangers Ball and 120 Minutes, which was the alternative show.
Okay.
So very much exactly what I wanted at exactly the right time. I was like going from little metalhead to flannel wearing grunge kid. And all of their songs were very sludgy and grungy and sort of depressing lyrics. And it just really hit for me. And I loved it so very much. There were two singles, one of which you probably know.
The one song I knew before listening to this record, Man in the Box.
Right. And the other single was We Die Young, which, right in the feels when you're...
First track off the album,
13.
maybe, if memory serves from me listening to it.
So what did you think?
So I'd only heard Man in the Box ever before. And I thought, I was like, oh, maybe. And when listening to it, I was like, oh, I really have not heard any of this music. It felt like to me, from somebody who had never like some bridge between like Guns N' Roses and Nirvana.
100%.
That's like I heard like the lead singer, and I was like, oh, I could hear like a little Metallica or something in there. Yeah. But then also like they sound like they're from Seattle, which I then found out, which I think they actually were out of Seattle. So in my head, it was like this weird like middle ground of something that I didn't really have a frame of reference for, because it's like in my head those are two very distinct like boxes, like that grunt, like Nirvana and Guns N' Roses. Yeah. I'm not putting them in the same box, but this feels like it has a toe in both worlds to me. So I definitely was surprised by like just going through the record, and I was like, oh, this feels like it is an amalgamation of a couple different genres at the same time.
And that's 100% how it was kind of sold to us at that time. And they actually toured with Anthrax, Megadeth, and Slayer, and were booed.
They weren't heavy enough for Raining Blood fans?
No, they were not. And they were pretty much not well received at that time. But I think for a lot of us, before the big boom happened and all of these bands were essentially obliterated off of the map, Alice in Chains was the bridge.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm trying to think back. Like there are certain songs that stuck out to me, and like I think it was Bleed the Freak. I think
that's a good one.
I think that's the first time where I was like, okay, I'm going to run this song back from the beginning when I was listening through this record the first time. Like that one stuck out to me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't like place what I thought they were, like I was thinking of like contemporary bands, and I was like, half of them reminds me of this band, and like half of them reminds me of that. So I feel like they're pretty unique in their own, like they sound like Alice in Chains.
They do, and it's a very that sound is just quintessentially 90s to me. And I'm curious as to what you're gonna think, because there are certain things that you listened to when you were younger and they don't necessarily Not that it doesn't hit anymore, but
does this record hold up for you now? When you listened to it recently in advance of this podcast,
yeah, I just listened to it. But I'm not sure I can separate the nostalgia from would I listen if it came out today. I probably wouldn't, to be honest with you.
Like it doesn't have. I mean, well, timing is like almost everything with something like that too. Like it was capturing. You said it was the right thing at the right time for exactly what you wanted. Like hair metal transitioning into grunge. Like this record was made for you.
Yes, but that being said, I still freaking love it. Like we were just listening to it upstairs in our office, and we were all just like, oh yes, this is the best.
There were a couple librarians who definitely judged me when they heard that I had never listened to this record ever before. Like specifically Nicole looked like she wanted to murder me.
It's a classic. It's a classic and very tied up. For me, this period of time is like all my musical heroes were like either getting addicted to heroin or dying from an overdose. And that just really was like a big part of my teenage years and my 20s, was like really fascinated by the hold that had on this culture. So Lane Staley passed away in 2002, so only 12 years after this album came out. So like a very short run of being able to deal with the fame and having popularity, and then they continued on without him, and someone else could probably speak to how great they are.
I was gonna say not the same band. I imagine it from a first listen through. It seemed like the lead singer was sort of integral to what was going on this record, at least to me,
would think.
From an uninformed fan.
Yeah.
So I can imagine how that might be a different. It's like Theseus' ship. Like how many parts do you replace until it is still the same ship?
Exactly.
Turns out
in this case it's two, because they also got rid of the bass player who also died of a drug overdose.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Mike Starr. Loved you.
So do you remember like getting this record for the first time, or like
It was cassette. And yes, 100%. Like I still remember like, okay, it's like we're flipping from side A to side B, and like the feeling of Bleed the Freak and knowing like where I was emotionally when that song would come on.
That one's like the one. Funny that worked out. It was a culture. Like, it was a point of reference for you emotionally in that, and that's the one that stuck out to me.
Very much so. Small world. So let's talk about your pick.
Okay, so my pick, which also made me feel very emotional when I was 13, turning 14, turning 15, is Taking Back Sunday's Louder Now record, released in 2006. This is Taking Back Sunday's third record. They are a Long Island band. They formed, a drummer from Rockville Center, somebody from Lindenhurst, somebody from Long Beach. Their first two records were recorded in Long Island or in New York City, and then they sort of came into their own. So they're an emo band, an emo alternative band, an alt rock band. In like 2006, like nobody wanted to be called emo, but like now looking back, they're like, yeah, of course we're going to be played at emo night. Like there's sort of like a rose-colored glasses. Like everyone was like, all music is emotional. It's a stupid, but now they're like, yeah, it's like a movement. So
it's funny because no one wanted to be called grunge either. Like they didn't want to be put in the box.
And then there was like Nirvana, and then they're like, of course we're grunge. It's the way it's like just all about perception. So they're like this alt rock emo band. This is their third record, and before then they were like, not like softer, but they were more like on the emotional side of emo, not like the guitar side of emo. And so with this record, they recorded it with a producer named Eric Valentine, who is an amazing producer. He runs a place called Barefoot Studios in LA. And they got him for two specific reasons. And I've sort of done a deep dive on this record. And so they got him because he, recorded Songs for the Deaf, the Queens of the Stone Age album, which is like sonically one of the tightest, best records ever recorded. And the drum sounds are amazing on that record. And like that record made guitars sound like they sounded in people's heads, but on a record. So they got him for that reason. And in their wheelhouse, he was the one specifically who got these huge drum sounds out of an emo band called Good Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
So he recorded all the drums for Good Charlotte, and Taking Back Sunday, they had these like Eric Valentine would build like these specific contraptions to specifically mic drums. He was like a drum wizard.
Oh, cool.
So like for this record, there's an anecdote where the day Taking Back Sunday shows up to LA to start recording this record, he was in the middle of building an isolation chamber for a kick drum because he wanted to record the kick drum from 10 feet away without getting feedback from the cymbals if you'd be that far. So he built an entire contraption around this kick drum. So they chose him for things like that to like transcend their sound from what was like a quiet, loud, Long Island emo band into like, this is like a rock record.
Right.
Like they have the guitars, they have the drums on this record. So this was not a departure, but I think this was the evolution of what their sound could have been if they had somebody, and they found somebody who was like, oh, you're doing this, but like, I think you mean to do that. And he gave all these small little things that elevated this record. It's not my favorite Taking Back Sunday record, but I think it is their best record that they ever produced, like musically, lyrically. It catapulted them in like the mainstream. There was like 6 singles they released off this record. Like they were touring in support of people, and now they were touring like with people who were bigger, supporting them after this record. So Louder Now, 2006. I'm 14 years old. It is like, emo is hot. It is a year off of like From Under the Cork Tree with Fall Out Boy.
Okay.
It is like, you know, this genre is thriving. And I love their record before this one, which is called Where You Want to Be. They released a record in 2002, 2004, and then Louder Now in 2006. So I ran that record into the ground. And so I remember the week that this record was coming out, me and a friend of mine were just nonstop listening to Where You Want to Be right before this. So we go up, and this record came out 4 days before my birthday in 2006. So my grandmother's birthday card from Georgia had come in early with her $20 bill in it.
20.
I took a $20 bill from Nana. Thank you, Nana. Rest in peace. And I went to FYE the Friday this record released, 4 days before my 14th birthday. And I bought this record, and I think I listened to it, like, let's see, it's a 54-minute record. I probably listened to it 20 times in 24 hours. Yeah. I just ran this record into the ground, and it blew me away because, like, I loved this band, but they were like a Long Island band, and now they like went out to LA to record this record, and they made it, and they released like a single that was made for the terrible Fantastic Four movie. Okay. So they had a song called Error Operator, and they had signed for Warner Brothers, and like Warner Brothers was like working with the people who were making this movie. So they're like, oh, we want to get a Taking Back Sunday song on this record. You're our new up and coming band. Makes total sense. They're like, can you write a song from the perspective of Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, like the head of the Fantastic Four, sure, who is a very rich doctor with superpowers. And the lead singer of Taking Back Sunday was like, well, I am really poor and I do not have superpowers, but I will try and retool this song. So they wrote Error Operator, released it as a single, and I did not like that song. And that was like one of the few in advance of this record. And then this record came out and it absolutely blew me away. Like this song, it starts with this song, What's It Feel Like to Be a Ghost? Mm-hmm. And I think that is the ultimate, like, I could get that, like I could put that song on and I'll be ready to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's a perfect intro for this record. And very much like I revisited this. I hadn't listened to it in a long time. And in anticipation of doing this podcast, I went back to this record and I was like, it is very hard for me to separate how I felt at 14 to this record,
right,
to like trying to bring an objective eye. Like, would I recommend this to a 32-year-old friend of mine that had no relation to emo whatsoever? I don't know if I would.
Yeah. But
it's hard to say, separating the nostalgia.
You can. And
it's been proving very difficult for me because I'm trying to listen to this record like I don't have, I mean, very much like a lot of emo music. Like I probably got into Taking Back Sunday to impress a girl originally. Of course. And then so like, if you're going to tell me like, try and think about what's it feel like to be a ghost without sitting in Amanda's room, like talking about how, like, it's hard for me to truly separate that.
And I think being older, right, and listening to this, my disconnect was I completely get how that would have felt, but I was too old.
Yeah, and like his voice isn't for everybody. Like the emo crooner.
I feel his voice, like it
you sort
fits
of
in a way that I'm like, ooh, I really like where it's striking me emotionally, but I just feel like I'm too, at this point, I'm
like, I don't know if I would get into this record now if I didn't at the time when it came out. You know,
Right.
like some things are, I think both of these records are very much speaking to like exactly when they came out. They are a product of their time, right?
100%.
And it's like
yes.
both it's genius, but also feels dated now when looking back. Like there are certain things of this record that I think are timeless, but on the flip side of that coin, there's certain things that's like, oh, that was so 2006. Like
Right.
they sound just like My Chemical Romance's first record that was put out a year prior. Like, and I'm like, oh, it puts me back in that time period, but there's also aspects of it that are timeless.
Yeah, it's funny that I was looking for like videos on YouTube, and the comments were essentially that, like, this, listening to this song takes me back to being 16. And a lot of the comments were actually kind of sad, like, bro, I miss you. I wish I could have said goodbye to you before you died. Like, that's what that's what these two albums I think represent, is that period of time when you had the time to get into music, and it struck a chord with you emotionally, and it was the backdrop to all of these things that you were doing with your friends, and when you didn't have all these other things in your brain rattling around, it was just like your friends and your Taco Bell and your music.
And there's not as much competing for your attention then either.
Yeah.
Like everyone I know in my circle listened to this record when it came out, you know,
Yeah.
like it just, and then just a little aside, this cover is actually a riff on a really famous, amazing photographer named Joel Meyerowitz. He has this really famous photograph of like a ticket taker from a movie theater, and they saw that Joel Meyerowitz photo, and they had their album cover person like recreate it. So I always love that. It's like one of my favorite photographs, and he's an amazing photographer. So just shout out Joel Meyerowitz. If just look at some of his photography, and Taking Back Sunday clearly had good taste when they designed that. I just saw that and I remembered I wanted to point that out.
Nice.
And that's something I had no idea in 2006 when this record, but going back to it now, I learned that, and I'm like into photography, and I'm like, this record is even more amazing than I gave it credit for in 2006 now.
Yeah.
So like they even were putting people onto things that were of good taste through like their record design and stuff.
And they're still touring. They're still doing things.
They just made a new record.
Like,
I think it was October of 2023. They released a new record.
Yeah.
There's two members of Taking Back Sunday who live in Long Beach, New York. So if you see
Come
this,
on
you know,
down.
please just come listen
Come
to
hang
your
out.
own amazing record at the Long Beach Public Library. That would be wonderful.
And you can check them out on August 17th at the Rooftop at Pier 17, which, if you haven't been, have you been?
I've never been.
It's probably the best outdoor venue in New York.
Okay.
Bold statement.
That's a big statement.
It is.
I will have to
It's
check
wonderful.
it out.
It's wonderful. Also, something that I picked up on when I was listening to your record is we both wound up selecting like two singers. Like there's a lot of call and response between Jerry Cantrell and Lane Staley. And
I did notice that too. There's a
Yeah.
lot of like, oh, that's the other singer singing. That's one of Taking Back Sunday's biggest thing. Their first record, their guitarist John Nolan was doing their backup vocals. He left after their first record, and then they had Fred come in for their second record. He's actually my favorite member. Like, shout out to all the members of this band. but the way it worked out was, I have a best friend that this was like one of our records, and he would always do the lead, and I would always do Fred's part. So like when I'm singing, I drove here in my car today listening to this record, I'm like waiting for somebody to do the lead, and I'm doing Fred's parts, and that's like, I'm like, wow, this is
where's my pal?
So it's internalized in me to
Yeah.
be that. So I think that's actually such a huge, amazing point that you just made.
Yeah.
Both of these records like are very prominent in that, like it is not just like a solo voice and then that same voice doing an ad lib or something. It's like call and response and two like unique voices creating the landscape. And I love that about Taking Back Sunday. So I'm so glad you pointed that out because I forgot.
Becoming one.
Yes.
Wow.
So ultimately, did you enjoy Louder Now when you listened to it?
Like I said, I can very much feel that my younger version would have loved it.
I am so glad you said that because I listened to Alice in Chains and I was like, I totally understand why she and many others love this record. I do not think I will ever choose to listen to it again.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't want to just flame her record, but I feel I think both of these records are like we feel the exact same way about it to one another.
Right. Like if we were driving and you turned it on, I would be like, cool, I'm happy to listen to Taking Back Sunday. But I don't have that emotional connection.
Yeah, and the nostalgia, as it turns out, big factor in music.
Nostalgia, whoa,
What a
that's a
drug.
killer. Yeah. This is Alyssa, our special guest
Welcome.
this month. Alyssa, co-owner of Wave Culture Coffee. Thank you so much for caffeinating our mornings, Alyssa.
Very important.
Tell us a little bit about your coffee business.
Okay, so it's a converted horse trailer. It's from 1970 something. Don't quote me on it.
So really warm.
Yeah, super warm in the winter. I had a great time. It was amazing. Don't want spring at all. It's a full-blown coffee bar in there with espresso, cold brew, teas, whatever you like. Matcha.
And where is it located?
So technically it's 227 East Park Ave, but it's in the lot next to that.
Okay.
So yeah,
Highly recommend the delicious coffee drinks.
Appreciate
and
it.
Alyssa, we have a little bit of history, so I know that you're cool.
We
and
do.
I knew that you would be down
So
to
down.
share your guest pick with us this month. So tell us about
Biggie Smalls, baby.
tell us about your
your
guest
favorite
pick.
record in the Long Beach Public Library's record collection.
Obviously. I'm very surprised that this was in there. I'm from Brooklyn originally,
What?
so that's why I chose it. But, I mean, lyrically, he's the best. He's great. He's a great storyteller. I grew up on this type of music, and that's why I chose it. And because I was shocked that you guys had it.
So I don't know if I want to out myself too much that I only know like a couple tracks. I definitely don't think I've ever listened to this
What do you know, Juicy?
all the way through. Well, Big Papa, of course.
Sure.
And Everyday Struggle. And maybe Suicidal Thoughts and Who Shot Ya.
You know more than you think.
Yeah, she
Okay.
just named like a good
Like
amount.
you named
Yeah.
most of the record.
Okay.
Like he didn't have many records. Like if you know
He had
Biggie
two.
Smalls, like you
Both
know
of
this
them-
record.
Both of them released while he was dead. so-
Both of them cover to
Yeah.
cover, perfect
Yeah.
albums.
What was
almost.
the single with Mace, though? Because that was me driving in my Mustang. That was a big song for me.
Feel So Good?
That
No, is that
that sounds right to me, but now I'm gonna embarrass myself on the internet. But I think that's right.
I don't know. Maybe possibly.
With
But that
Pastor
was-
Mace.
That, oh,
Pastor
Pastor
Mace.
Mace.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. He's
that
a
was a
pastor
jam.
now.
So the next thing that we're going to have to get in the collection for you is Maggie Rogers.
Obviously, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about
The natural
the
progression.
range of, so you, as a young person growing up in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
you were down with the hip hop.
Absolutely.
That was
For
your
sure.
foundational music.
Yeah, definitely.
And then
It's like
what
the most
happened?
out of
beach
touch
and I
way to say that
relaxed. I
possible.
calmed down.
As a young person in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
you were really down with
Growing
the
up
hip
in the
hop,
hood.
weren't you?
Yeah. tell
Yeah,
us.
Continue.
I moved out of Brooklyn and I calmed down. And
Okay,
now
yeah.
Maggie Rogers is, more my speed. I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and also rap music sucks now, but
Oh,
I mean, I'll disagree with that, but that's a topic for another
I'm
time.
just saying,
we're making friends.
You know, when Biggie Smalls was making music, they were like, "This is garbage compared to the rap of the '80s. This isn't."
That's fair.
So
Sure, that's fair.
if we take a step back,
I hurt Tom's feelings. I'm sorry.
you didn't. I'm just very opinionated,
All right,
and that's why
fair.
we have a podcast.
There you go.
Essentially.
I was like, I can
That's
talk
it.
for an hour on the library's time about music and yell at people. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's great. I support you so much.
So the next step for Alyssa is
Yeah.
to get a library card.
Is it?
It is.
Okay.
And then you could check out all of our amazing hip hop records
Uh-huh.
from our collection and take them home with you.
Sure, except I don't own them.
You don't, okay, so we're gonna listen to records here.
Yeah, maybe we could go
on the
shopping
Georgia-
for one.
And then, I mean, we can always recommend.
Yeah.
Also, in the Long Beach Public Library's Library of Things soon, you'll be able to take a record player out as well. So that's even more reason why you should have a library card.
You guys are bougie. I love it.
Or
Eventually.
a karaoke machine.
What?
Or a bubble maker.
You could take
me take
out
this home?
you could take out a karaoke machine and a record player, and then play records and sing along to
I don't think I've ever spoken into a microphone before, so this is so cool.
This is very official.
We love
here.
it.
Yeah.
We love it.
Tax dollars at work.
Well, thank you so much for coming
You
by
got it.
and
Yes.
sharing Notorious B.I.G.
Yeah, 100%.
Ready to Die.
Great.
Do you have any like a specific memory, like driving around in a friend's car, like bumping this right? Like, is there anything that sticks out to you about that? Like anything that comes to mind? I just love to get a.
I think that there's a good chance that I know this album word for word.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like if we were better prepared, we would put you on the spot.
Thing to be like, all right, so the
This is-
ad lib
is this yeah,
of
is
the
this explicit
pre-chorus.
version, or-
It is the explicit version. We do not censor speech here at the library.
Wow, that's crazy.
Uh-huh,
Such a fan. I love cursing. If I had to pick a song, I'd say Respect is a...
And not even like that's not anyone's go-to
No,
of
it's
like
not. It's a
songs
great,
that they're
great
going
song.
to pick.
That's a great song. I
So set us
slept
up.
on.
Where were you? Were you in your room listening on like a boombox? Like what was your in the car?
In the car with...
Yeah, we get
You know?
it. We're
I mean,
And,
this
we're
is
just
such
driving
this is
around
such a
and-
car record too, though. Like
Yeah.
even me, like having been removed, like 10 years past when this album was at its peak, when I was
Yeah,
driving
for
around
sure.
with my friends being hooligans in my car.
Hooligan. I
you know,
was a hooligan. You're
I
right.
absolutely
I'm
was.
dressed like a
Could
hooligan.
never-
I am not.
never
I
would guess.
was not always like this. I promise you. So like this was even like driving around doing
Yeah.
things we probably shouldn't do record
Absolutely.
for me. So I feel like it absolutely like hit that in its peak as well.
Yeah,
like,
I tried to buy a machine gun because a machine gun's fun. Crazy.
and that didn't go over well in New York.
What were you driving? How was the bass in your automobile?
Oh, it's terrible. Like it was like I think it was like a 1990 Honda Civic. You know, just like
That's
really,
actually
like,
a great car for Blast and Biggie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's not terrible. It's good for sure.
Did you have some sick rims?
No, I think I had like missing hubcaps.
Uh-huh. You lived in Brooklyn. I understand.
Yeah, you know,
I'm from
they're
Queens.
Obviously stolen. You know.
Sweet.
Yeah, he has such like I think the only car other than like a 1990 Civic that played more Biggie was like a Nissan Maxima. That's if I had to. I like if we could look at the stats of the world, I think Civic would be really high up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
Maxima, I think,
Yeah.
Some
was
ground
the
effects.
number one that played Biggie Smalls the
Yeah.
most
Yeah,
in
that's
that
a
car.
solid one. Also,
Really gigantic spoiler. Was your spoiler normal sized?
I think it was Gorilla glued on because you know sketched on the back of it.
Ah, Brooklyn
Yeah.
days.
The Brooklyn days, man.
So let's talk about our amazing trip to Buddha Belly Records in
Out in
Sayville.
Yeah.
We had an amazing visit with Mike over there. He has got a great shop. He's got some crystals. He's got tea. He's got merch and a beautiful collection of new and used
It's
records.
like a whole vibe. It's like not
It's
just
a vibe.
record store. There is like clearly a vision.
Yeah.
And my favorite part about it was an extremely well curated collection.
It was. And I feel like it tuned into a lot of your favorites.
Oh, absolutely. Like him and I would be friends. Like I like going to a record store and like I'm seeing what they're featuring on the wall and I'm like, oh yeah, me and the person who chose all these displays would like get along very well.
Yeah. A lot of hip hop, a lot of soul, a lot of R&B. And we picked up a few for our collection.
What do we got?
We got Bowie. Oh, look, that was completely unintentional, but well done. Bowie, Aladdin Sane. I think Bowie's becoming our patron saint in this.
I think
listening
we have the
lounge.
most Bowie records out of any individual artist. We have 3
Yeah.
Bowie records now.
And it's only growing. Funkadelic, Maggot Brain. This was featured on Tom's original list of 100 essential albums. So we're getting closer to getting them all.
It is essential, and everyone should come listen to this record if you haven't.
And Melanie Martinez, which was an incredible donation from one of our librarians, Amy, and her daughter. Melanie is originally from Baldwin, so this is technically a local artist.
The record's
we
called
both
Portals.
loved this album,
Yeah.
Portals.
I was so surprised. I had never heard of this record before. There's only so much time in the day. And when you said that Amy donated it, and her daughter had like gone to school with Melanie Martinez, I believe. So I went to check out this record and like I listened to the first song and I was like, oh, that's actually really interesting for what is built as like a pop record.
Yeah.
And then before I knew it, I had listened to the entirety cover to cover and it has stuck with me. Like it is in my rotation now since this record has been donated. So.
Yes, I love this record so much. I am 100% a new fan. Really, really excited that someone brought this into our lives, like completely unexpectedly. And it's also the vinyl is gorgeous too. I think it's like a pink and gray.
Yeah, no, it is. There was a vision that went into the entirety of this
Yeah.
record. Like even the lyric sheet and everything, like it is all very cohesive. It's like almost, I think it even might be like
What's the word, Tom?
it just gone from
It's
my brain
gone.
forever. It doesn't even matter.
Okay, I would recommend this to if you like Fiona Apple, if you like Lana Del Rey, if you like your pop a little weird and a little funky.
If you like the weird experimental pop group 100 Gex, I think that this will be up your alley as well. There's like elements of this that are super off the wall and then elements of this that are like super grounded in traditional good pop music, but it just like it's pop music with soul as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So like I really recommend this record.
That is Melanie Martinez, Portals, and you could check it out in the Vinyl Listening Lounge at the Long Beach Public Library. Follow us on Instagram at LBPL.
_NY.